Which means we're currently staring down the barrel of the summer 2025 anime season. And while change can be scary, I can guarantee you that the change from this spring season to this summer season is gonna be good change. See, because here's the thing. While a lot of us, myself very much included, believe that the spring 2025 season was gonna be one of the greatest that we had seen in recent years, it wasn't that. Between Lazarus being a dud, Fire Force dropping its worst yet season, the beginning after the end being animated on what appears to be a $4.30 budget, and Vigilantes just being kind of boring, the only real standouts in any real way from this season of anime were Windbreaker and To Be Hero X, both of which were good, just not great, with Windbreaker's second season being much closer to great than To Be Hero X. However, I have not an ounce of doubt in my heart when I look you in the eyes and tell you that the summer 2025 season is going to be the best season of anime that we have had in years. I feel so confident about that, in fact, that if the summer 2025 season isn't at least the best season of 2025 in terms of anime, I'll shave my beard. And I've only done that once in the last 6 years. But as we barrel into what I believe is going to be the best anime season of not only this year, but of the last couple of years, I want to make sure you're as prepared as possible for this absolutely monumental anime season. Because while this anime season does have a couple of first seasons of TV shows coming out, it is truly the season of sequels. And therefore today I want to prep you on everything that's coming back, the things that you need to know about these returning series, when the episodes are dropping, where they're dropping, because a couple of shows are dropping on places not named Crunchyroll, and more importantly than anything, what you need to know in order to enjoy these upcoming seasons of anime to their fullest extent. So with no further ado, let's get directly into everything that you need to know before the summer 2025 anime season. But before we get to prepping you for an incredible 3 months of anime, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for an additional Nick video every single week, guys, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series in the fourth wall link using my description below. We're on to the written part of the Chunin exams. So today we're going to be talking about 9 anime projects that are coming out in the summer 2025 season. 7 anime and 2 movies. 6 of those TV shows are sequels to previous popular seasons of anime, and only 1 of those anime TV series is the first season of an airing anime, though it is the first season of a massively popular manga that I could not be more excited about. And thus we got a lot to talk about today. And thus we're going to approach this video in the way that we tend to approach these kinds of videos, and start with the projects that we're least excited about and work our way to the ones that we're most excited about. Which brings us to our first out of 9 animes to talk about today, Dr. Stone. Yes, Dr. Stone is already dropping the continuation to Science Future. Dr. Stone aired part 1 of Dr. Stone Science Future in the winter 2025 season, aka last season, and now just 6 months later they're loading up for part 2. Now I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you, it's just gonna be more Dr. Stone. However, there's some pretty crazy developments on the horizon. See, now that Senku has recovered from his 50 caliber bullet to the stomach and escaped Northern California with Ryusui, Chrome, Taiju, and a couple of other key characters, all while having Dr. Zenu, who's essentially Senku's rival in terms of science, as their hostage, Senku and the core crew, as in the cast of characters that weren't either left in Japan or in California, have to make their way to South America, all the while avoiding pursuit from Dr. Zeno's highly technologically advanced men like Stanley in order to pursue their goals of depetrifying millions of people in specific areas so that they can build out cities that can craft key components so that eventually a space program can be made in the stone world that will allow for Senku to fly to the moon and confront Y-Man. However, before Senku and the rest of his main characters can create a stone world space program, they want to head to South America because they were able to trace back the epicenter of the petrification beam back to South America. And thus, while this trip to South America is mostly so they can set up a superconductor city that allows for the space program to eventually literally get off the ground and to the moon one day, it's also one of the most important arcs when it comes down to cracking what happened with the petrification beam and how humanity had a hand in it. So, well, yes, it's just gonna be more Dr. Stone, except now with the smallest cast of characters that we've really seen since the very beginning of Dr. Stone. The dynamic between Dr. Zeno and Senku as they try to uncover the secrets behind the human petrification beam that petrified the entire world is gonna lead to an incredibly interesting and fun part 2 to Science Future. But I am gonna go ahead and tell you here, before we get into part 2 of this show, expect the unexpected. This season is not gonna pan out the way that you expect it to. The first episode of Dr. Stone Science Future Part 2 comes out July July 10th on Crunchyroll. Up next after Dr. Stone in terms of excitement, we have in a very similar situation as Dr. Stone, part 2 of Sakamoto Days. Now I say Sakamoto Days is in a very similar situation because part 1 of Sakamoto Days also only came out 6 months ago. And thus, like with Dr. Stone, it's kind of crazy to have these 2 seasons of anime so close to each other. However, when you consider the fact that both Sakamoto Days and Dr. Stone Science Future were probably approached as 24 episode anime seasons, then it seems less like, oh my god, 2 full seasons of anime so close to each other, and more like, oh, you broke up a 24 episode season into 2 parts and then just put them kind of close to each other. Anyways, part 1 of Sakamoto Days, that is to say the first, I believe, 11 episodes of Sakamoto Days, covered the first 37 chapters of Sakamoto Days' manga. So part 2 will feasibly cover up until somewhere in the region of chapters 75 to 80. Now, this is kind of an awkward spot for the Sakamoto Days manga to leave off, as that would leave the Sakamoto Days anime kind of smack dab in the middle of an arc. But that's also exactly what part 1 did. See, because while yes, part 1 of Sakamoto Days ends off at chapter 37 of the manga, chapter 37 of the manga is smack dab in the middle of the Death Row Prisoners arc. And thus, while part 1 of Sakamoto Days began a story arc, it didn't finish it. However, that's what the first most likely 5 to 6 episodes of part 2 of Sakamoto Days will accomplish. See, the Death Row Prisoners arc is actually a very important arc, because it's the first arc where Slur, who's one of the main antagonists of Sakamoto Days, is introduced. See, over the course of the Death Row Prisoner arc, the Sakamoto squad has to hunt down 4 Death Row prisoners who were released from prison, as they believe that these 4 Death Row prisoners will have information that they'll be able to weasel out of them on Slur. See, for those of you who don't know, Slur is a serial killer who wants to destroy the JAA, the Japanese Assassination Association, the association that employs all of the assassins and runs all of the assassination missions that take place in Japan. Now, Slur did previously work for the JAA. However, after Taro Sakamoto retired, Slur assassinated 1/4 of the assassins that worked within the confines of JAA, making him one of the most wanted people in all of Japan, if not the most wanted. And he became known as Slur, or X, because at the sites of all of the assassins that he murdered, he would leave a gigantic X in blood. Now, after the Death Row Prisoners arc, which, like I said, will probably be the first 5 to 6 episodes of part 2 of Sakamoto Days, we're gonna enter into the JCC arcs, which is essentially Sakamoto Days' school arc, where Shin and Sakamoto, or Taro, have to break into the school that makes Japanese assassins, the JCC, or the Japanese Clear Corporation. And thus, if you love silly school content or test content, then you're gonna love the second half of this season, which is gonna start airing rather late on July 15th on Netflix. Now, after Sakamoto Days part 2, at our number 3 spot, we have Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus. Now, if that sounds remotely familiar to any of you, I'll remind you why. See, while the universe of Rascal Does Not Dream is largely known as the Bunny Girl Senpai universe, that's not what it's called. See, well, yes, I will admit the Rascal Does Not Dream universe doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. That's the actual name of the light novel universe that makes up the Bunny Girl Senpai universe. But anyways, moving forward, what we're getting in the upcoming summer 2025 season is a sequel to the Bunny Girl Senpai anime, Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus. However, it's not really a sequel. See, because a lot of you are probably thinking to yourself, oh my god, it's been so long since Bunny Girl Senpai came out. I mean, what was that, 2018? And yes, good memory, you're right, it was 2018. And 6 years seems like a preposterously long time to wait to give a sequel to what is considered to be one of the greatest romance anime of all time. And in a way, you are correct, because this upcoming season of Rascal Does Not Dream is the first time that Rascal Does Not Dream has returned to the TV forum since 2018 with Bunny Girl Senpai. However, there has not been a break in the Rascal Does Not Dream universe. See, because I understand that some of you are like me, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, I basically remember what happens in Bunny Girl Senpai. There's a guy who can see a girl that nobody else can see. His sister's a shut-in. I can hop right into the season, and unfortunately, you're kind of wrong. See, because between Bunny Girl Senpai and Santa Claus, there are 3, yes, count them, 3 canon movies. And thus, if you're remembering watching Bunny Girl Senpai fondly and want to hop into Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus, first, not only would I recommend re-watching Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, but then you also have to watch Rascal Does Not Dream of Dreaming Girl, the movie, Rascal Does Not Dream of Sister Venturing Out, the movie, and the most recent movie, Rascal Does Not Dream of Knapsack Kid. And then, and only then, are you ready to hop into Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus. See, the original 12-episode anime run of Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai covers the first 5 light novels of the Rascal Does Not Dream universe. The second movie covers covers the 7th and 8th light novels, and the third movie covers the 9th light novel. Now, the Rascal Does Not Dream universe is a completed light novel series that only features 15 light novels. So, considering the fact that the first 12-episode anime season covered 5 light novels, there's a fair to good chance that Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus could be the ending of this universe in an animated format. However, there's also the possibility that they'll leave the last light novel for an additional 4th and final movie. Now, I can do a rundown video on everything that happens in those 12 episodes of anime in those 3 movies, but only if you guys would want that. So if you would want it, let me know in the comments below. But if you're all caught up, Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus is going to be released nice and early on July 5th over on Crunchyroll. But since talking about romance anime on this channel for maybe the first time ever, let's talk about our number 4 spot on this list, Call of the Night Season 2. Now listen, there's a fair to decent chance that a lot of you missed Call of the Night Season 1. It's a High Dive exclusive, and High Dive is kind of a terrible app. The UI is awful, and really all they have going for them is Call of the Night and Oshinoko. However, if there is a reason to get a High Dive membership, if it's not Oshinoko, it is Call of the Night. This is a very fun and soon-to-be action-packed romance anime. It's a story about a world where vampires skulk out in the nighttime. But if vampires want to turn other people into vampires, not only do they have to go through the traditional route of biting somebody's neck, but then they also have to have the person that they've turned into a vampire fall in love with them in a year. Otherwise, the person that they tried to turn into a vampire dies. And thus the main storyline follows our 2 main characters, Ko and Nazuna. Ko being an insomniac who wanders the night streets in search of any kind of connection or entertainment, and Nazuna being our main interest and main vampire. Now, Call of the Night's anime doesn't necessarily adapt everything in Call of the Night's manga. In fact, they fairly often skip entire chapters, but they've already been very open about the fact that Season 2 of Call of the Night is going to cover the cigarette case arc. An arc that revolves around 4-ish people. Those people being Ko and his male friend Mahiru, Kiku, a charming yet ominous new vampire, and Haru Nanakusa, an older sibling figure to Nazuna. Now, Ko and Mahiru are childhood friends, who at one time were very close. However, now that Ko has dropped out of school and began his nighttime wanderings, have drifted apart. However, during one of Ko's nighttime wanderings, he bumps back into Mahiru, and immediately they rekindle their friendship, as Mahiru shows genuine concern for Ko and his inability to hold down a job or have any interest in being taught anything. However, as these 2 friends begin to rekindle their relationship, a divide appears between them, as Mahiru begins to become infatuated with the idea of becoming a vampire, something that Ko himself is actually really struggling with. And yet Mahiru begins to fall in love with a charming yet mysteriously motivated vampire in Kiku. And while all of this is going on with Ko and Mahiru and Kiku, an important character by the name of Haru Nanakusa is introduced, who sheds some light on Nazuna's incredibly shady and mysterious past. See, Haru is a nurse and operates as a pseudo-older sibling to Nazuna, which means she's able to shed some incredible light on the dynamics between humans and vampires, which allows for Ko to make the most informed decisions about how he wants to approach his relationship with Nazuna possible. This arc is massive for Call of the Night. While Season 1 of Call of the Night is mostly just Ko and Nazuna messing around in the middle of the night, going to nighttime pools and maid cafes, this season in the cigarette case arc shifts Call of the Night from a whimsical nighttime romp around to a more serious, character-driven, conflict-filled drama, where Ko goes from a boy who has no idea what he wants to a man who's willing to strive for the things that he needs. If Season 1 of Call of the Night wasn't enough to get you into the show, I highly recommend picking it up now that Season 2 is coming out. And it's dropping on America's birthday, July 4th on High Dive. Now, after Call of the Night, we have the latest dropping anime of this season, Season 2 of Kaiju number 8, which isn't dropping until July 19th, a full 2 weeks after things like Dawn to Dawn, Call of the Night, and Rascal Does Not Dream of Santa Claus, which seems to imply to me that Kaiju number 8's second season is actually going to have an abbreviated season, most likely only running 10 or so episodes. Now, this is most likely done for a reason, and that reason is so that Season 2 of Kaiju number 8 does not reach the second wave arc, the arc that essentially kicks off the war that's going on right now in the Kaiju number 8 manga. And thus it appears as though that the showrunners making Kaiju number 8 only want 3 manga arcs covered in Season 2. Those arcs being the Kaiju weapon arc, the compatible users arc, and the cataclysms arc. And listen, these aren't the most interesting arcs of Kaiju number 8, unfortunately. There's really no bad arc in Kaiju number 8. Its floor isn't that low, but its ceiling also isn't that high. But yeah, most likely season 2 of Kaiju number 8 will cover until about chapter 75 of the manga. And thus the first couple of episodes will have a heavy emphasis on the introduction of one of the most important characters in the Kaiju number 8 manga, Gen Narumi, the most powerful kaiju hunter in the entire Kaiju number 8 universe. The captain of Company 1, the man who's able to access 98% of the power of his suit, the highest out of anybody in any of the squads on a consistent basis. But Gen Narumi's introduction plays a pivotal role in the second season of Kaiju number 8's anime because he, alongside Isao Shinomiya, Kikuru's father and the head of the Kaiju Killing Corps, are the two most current prominent users of number weapons amongst all kaiju fighters. And that's really what this season is gonna be about. Numbers weapons. See, while there is a myriad of ways to be strong in the Kaiju number 8 universe, the only real way to be one of the strongest fighters in the Kaiju number 8 universe is to have access to a numbers weapon. Now, a numbers weapon is a weapon that's made from the body of a numbered kaiju. Now, for those of you who don't remember, a numbered kaiju is a kaiju whose kaiju strength meter clocks in at above an 8.5 out of 10. So Kaiju number 9 and Kaiju number 10 both had power ratings over an 8.5, and thus they were classified as incredibly dangerous Daikaiju, and upon being defeated, at least in the case of Kaiju number 10, their bodies are brought in to be studied and possibly turned into a numbers weapon. Now, these numbers weapons convey the abilities of the numbered kaijus that they were made from, and thus a lot of Gen's abilities come from the fact that he has the number 1, as in the first numbered kaiju, numbers weapon, which is a gray armored suit that is covered in eyeballs that also gives him what appears to be a dojutsu of sorts that allows for him to read and predict the movements of multiple enemies simultaneously by reading the electrical signals sent from their brain to their muscles. And thus, Gen is kind of meant to serve as the template of what main characters of the Kaiju number 8 universe could accomplish in terms of strength if they find compatibility with a strong numbers weapon. On top of this, he also takes Kikuru under his wing as her instructor, allowing for her to achieve a crazy new level of power. And thus, the TLDR of it all is that season 2 of Kaiju number 8 is going to be heavily focused on main characters of the Kaiju number 8 cast trying to find compatibility with numbered weapons. And while there is still plenty of action and plenty of fights, it is going to be a little bit slower than season 1. And it doesn't come out until July 19th on Crunchyroll. Now, after Kaiju number 8's second season, we have the first movie we're going to be talking about today, which is part 1 of the Infinity Castle trilogy. This movie comes out sooner than you realize, as it's going to start airing at least in Japan July 18th. Unfortunately, it won't be hitting US and UK theaters until September 12th. So, if you're watching this video in English, unfortunately, it won't be out for you that soon, but maybe if you speak Japanese, go to Japan. And listen, if 9/11 gets you down, well, this actually won't help. Now, there are 66 chapters left of Demon Slayer to be adapted for these 3 movies to cover, which means that more likely than not that every single movie in this trilogy will cover about 22 chapters of content. And thus this first movie will most likely cover from chapter 140 to chapter 162. And that actually works out literally perfectly, because a massive fight comes to its end in chapter 162. Now, these 22 chapters are going to be heavily, and I mean heavily, focused on the Upper Moon number 2 and 3 positions. That is to say, Akaza and Doma. And most importantly, the fights that take place between them and their Demon Slayer counterparts. Now, I'm not going to tell you who fights who, because that's a spoiler, but I will give you a light rundown on what to expect from these fights. See, even though Akaza is a character that we know relatively well at this point in the time on account of the Mugen Train arc, Doma, while we have seen him a couple of times, is a relative mystery to anime-only watchers. Now, Doma is a very interesting character, a boy born with rainbow eyes, and thus he was placed at the top of the cult that his mother and father led, as their proverbial godhead realized pretty early into his lifetime that he had no emotions. A sociopath who didn't even blink when his mother murdered his father in front of him and then killed herself, as he only thought to himself that the blood they sprayed everywhere would stain his furniture forever. Now, Doma has been a high-ranking demon for almost 100 years now. Previously, Upper Moon number 6, he slowly but surely climbed through the ranks until he eventually achieved Upper Moon rank 2, which is undoubtedly as far as he could ever go, considering the fact that Upper Moon rank 1 is Kokyushibu, a demon whose strength is almost parallel to that of Muzan himself. Now, a ton is going to get revealed about how Doma has touched the lives of multiple demon slayers, as even now, as a demon, he still runs the cult that he was born into, using it as a feeding ground around as he pulls in his victims through his religious teachings. Now, Doma's blood demon art is cryokinesis. That is to say that he's able to create and control ice from his blood. And the scale at which he can control this ice is like nothing you've seen yet in Demon Slayer. He is insanely powerful, and his battle is awesome. And the same could be said for Akaza, whose backstory is absolutely brutal. Listen, I'm not going to get too much into the backstories of either of these characters or tell you who they battled against or how the battles end, but I will say, bring tissues for this movie. In fact, bring tissues for all of the new Demon Slayer movies. That's a blanket warning for the entire trilogy. But speaking of movies, up next on our number 7 spot, we have Dandadan Season 2. Also coming out on America's birthday, this arc of Dandadan is going to cover the Evil Eye arcs. Now, the reason that I say speaking of movies is because in certain places in the US, theaters showed the first 3 episodes of Season 2 to anybody who bought a ticket. Now, it was really only theaters that existed in places with high Asian populations, like California, Texas, Massachusetts. Me and Danny fortunately got invited to see these first 3 episodes before Japan even got their hands on them over here in LA. And let me tell you, the first 3 episodes of this season are the best episodes of Dandadan ever. Now listen, I'm not even trying to shell for Dandadan because they invited me to a crazy event and gave me free food and drinks and I got to talk to Alex Lee and absolutely boof trying to get him to follow me on Instagram. I'm shelling for season 2 of Dandadan because the first 3 episodes are legitimately insane. And while a lot of you probably won't get the opportunity to see these first 3 episodes on the big screen, I would recommend watching them on literally the biggest screen you have access to. See, season 2 of Dandadan is going to focus very heavily on Gigi, Momo's childhood friend who is being haunted by either 1 or maybe 2 yokai. And thus at the end of season 1, Okarun and Momo made their way to Gigi's hometown to try and possibly suss out what could be going on with Gigi's home. Because just a couple of days, if not weeks prior, for some unknown reason, Gigi's parents had gotten ill, and thus Gigi believed that his home was haunted by some kind of spirit. And thus, yeah, it does get revealed that Gigi's home is haunted, but Gigi has been protected by something known as the Evil Eye. However, this help really isn't help at all. See, this arc revolves around not only a massive fight to take on the yokai that's been haunting Gigi's hometown for hundreds of years, it also deals with the aftermath of that battle where Gigi makes a proverbial pact with the devil, which forces Okarun to get stronger quick as he quickly becomes the only person strong enough to take on this new evil invited into his found family. This season starts airing July 4th, and it's gonna be absolutely incredible. But once again, speaking of movies, at our number 9 spot, second from highest on the list here, we have the Chainsaw Man movie, Reze arc. Now, this being on the list is kind of a technicality, because while the Reze arc movie does release on September 19th in Japan, which would technically fall within the confines of the summer 2025 season, the movie actually doesn't begin airing in the United States until October 29th, which would technically be the fall 2025 season. But I want to talk about it, so you gotta deal with me. This movie is going to cover one of the most touching yet devastating arcs in all of Chainsaw Man, as it tells the love story of Denji and Reze. See, Reze is a girl that bumps into Denji one day when it is absolutely pouring outside, and Denji makes her kind of fall in love with him as he throws up a flower that he ate earlier to give to her as they co-inhabit a phone booth trying to stay out of the rain. The arc then follows Denji as he tries to pursue Reze, trying to make her like him in really whatever way that he can. This is a really, and I mean really, big arc for Denji's growth as a character, as Reze is kind of the first person outside of the Tokyo Special Division that ever treats Denji like a human, doing things like teaching him how to swim and how to read. It is a heartfelt arc filled with gripping action, because as Denji is trying to fall in love with Reze, he is also being hunted down by an assassin by the name of Bomb Girl from the USSR, a human devil hybrid just like him, who's able to turn parts of her body into bombs. And as the USSR's premier assassin, Denji has to walk an incredibly fine line between love and life. This arc's gonna hurt a lot. So let's change our blanket statement from earlier. If you're going to see an anime movie this summer, just bring tissues. But even a canon movie from my current favorite manga on earth is not my number 1 entry on this list, because coming in at number 1 on this list in terms of excitement from me for the summer 2025 season is season 1 of Gacha Yakuta.
Oh, but Nick Bones is making Gacha Yakuta. They're gonna ruin it.
No, Bones isn't making Gacha Yakuta. Bones Film is. Yes, Bones, like a lot of other animation studios in Japan as of late, has created a subsection within its own company dedicated to creating high-quality anime films. And while Bones Film hasn't made a whole lot of projects, they have been the ones responsible for animating Vigilantes, which looks way better than any season of MHA simply ever has, and they will be the ones responsible for animating the final part of MHA, which tells us that MHA will probably look at least as good as Vigilantes, if not better. And therefore, well, yeah, the idea of Bones being attached to Gacha Yakuta, what is effectively one of my favorite manga in existence right now, did scare me as well. It's clear Bones is putting a lot of time, effort, and money into the adapting of Gacha Yakuta. But why? Why would they do that? Why would they do that for this relatively unknown, very hard to find manga? Well, that's because Gacha Yakuta is sick, like just so cool, and I believe in relatively short order it will be, if not the most popular anime on earth, one of them. But what is Gacha Yakuta, for those of you who don't know anything about it? Well, Gacha Yakuta is a story that revolves around a boy by the name of Rudo. Now, Rudo and his foster father live in the slums of an incredibly wealthy town. The wealthiness of this town has led basically everybody in that town to treat everything as if it's disposable. Your couch gets a rip on it, cool, throw it out. That bread's got a little speckle of mold, cool, throw it out. And Rudo hates the wastefulness of the upper class, and thus Rudo often rummages through the trash of the upper class to find what he identifies as lost treasures. That is before the trash of the upper class is dumped into what's known as the abyss, a gigantic hole in the center of the town where anything that's considered trash is dumped, including, very often, people, one of whom was Rudo's own biological father, who was thrown into the abyss after being accused of murder, something that happens to Rudo in short order. And as nobody believes Rudo's claims of innocence, he is thrown into the abyss. However, the abyss has a bottom, a toxic world that seems to be comprised almost entirely of trash, in which roams massive monsters made out of trash. And as Rudo is attacked by one of those trash monsters, he's saved by somebody by the name of Engine, who proclaims himself to be a cleaner, a person who uses what's known as a vital instrument to combat these monsters made out of trash. Now, these vital instruments are made from the Japanese saying that anything that's loved long enough will gain a soul of its own, kind of like the Going Merry in One Piece, and thus once these items that somebody holds on to for a long enough time and treats with enough love and care eventually gain superpowers. And those who are able to tap into those superpowers are known as cleaners. And thus Rudo must use his vital instrument gloves given to him by his adoptive father Regto to battle back from the abyss back to the village to find who framed him for murder. It is a fantastic manga that I believe is going to turn into a fantastic anime. And while it may never edge out things like Dawn to Dawn or Soul Leveling, I believe it will be talked about in the same breath as those two massively important, massively beloved new gen anime. But then again, what do I know? I said this season was going to be good, and look at me now. But what are you guys most excited for in this upcoming anime season? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell.
Oh, Nick, you didn't mention Dress Up, darling.
I don't watch Dress Up. What do you want from me here? Now, there is some shows that I probably should have mentioned that I believe are actually going to be very good, like The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity, or maybe even The Summer, where Hikaru died, or one that I'm really keeping my eye on here is Togen Unki. I think that's going to be good. It's about like Onis battling against different kinds of Onis. Anyways, there's a lot going on this anime season. I'm going to try and watch a lot. No, I'm not going to watch the new panty and stocking with garter belt. I don't even know what it's about. Stop asking me about it.